Well, Conservative MP for Harlow, Robert Halfon, is parliamentary champion of the Fair Fuel campaign and is raising the issue of fuel prices in a parliamentary debate today. Well, what will he be saying? I spoke to him earlier on this morning before the programme, and straight away he responded to my comment that we probably accept it.
Well, first of all, I don't think we should accept it. Oil prices have gone down in the world, yet the petrol companies haven't reduced, oil companies haven't reduced oil prices. We are being fleeced as motorists. The average Harlow motorist spends a tenth of their income on petrol every year, and the government defines fuel poverty as someone spending a tenth of their income on fuel. So in essence, motorists are facing fuel poverty.
So is this causing real hardship now? And in that case, how?
Well, it's huge hardship because if the average motorist in my constituency is paying £1,700 a year in petrol, that is money that otherwise could be spent on themselves and their families. It's a ginormous amount that people can't afford. It's one of the biggest issues facing me as MP. I get emails and letters and representations from Harlow residents all the time about the cost of fuel, and something has to be done. So I'm arguing that, one, there should be no new taxes on fuel this Parliament. We also need a fair fuel rebate. So if the oil companies don't reduce the price of petrol when the national or the international oil price goes down, they should face a windfall tax, and that money should be given back to consumers. And finally, I'm arguing that the government needs to set up a commission to look at radical ideas and possibly shift the cost of petrol onto things like toll roads and reduce the price for motorists at the petrol station and do it that way.
Whenever the subject comes up, and it comes up with great regularity, people say, well, it's not the petrol companies. They get a minute percentage of the price we pay at the pump. It's the tax that goes on it.
Yes, well, that is a fair point, but nevertheless, at least the government cut petrol tax by 1p, and also they didn't increase petrol in lines with Labour's planned fuel escalator.
But they did put the VAT up to 20%.
That's a fair point, but petrol is £1 million lower than it would have been had there been a Labour government. So, of course, they did. Some taxes have gone up, but they cut petrol tax at the recent budget. It's not ideal, and I'm arguing there should be no more petrol taxes this Parliament.
Isn't the reality that the petrol companies are just so internationally powerful that national governments have very little control over them nowadays?
Well, that is also an important point, but we could impose the fair under my scheme of a fair fuel tax rebate. We would have a windfall tax on petrol companies that refuse to cut petrol prices when the international oil price has fallen, and that money would go straight back to motorists. And in that way, petrol companies would know that they could no longer take us for granted and treat us all like fools.
How would it go straight back to the motorists? What would be the mechanism for that?
Well, it would go back in the sense that the government could use that windfall tax in the way they did in the budget by cutting petrol tax.
Right, so that we would get it one way.
Exactly.
Right. Reality? Is this going to happen?
Well, I'm a backbench MP, as you know. I'm a new MP. I've only been elected a year. All I can do is campaign hard. I did campaign hard before the budget for fuel taxes. I saw George Osborne, the Chancellor, and the Prime Minister about it, and they did listen, and they cut fuel taxes at the budget. All I can do is make as much noise as possible and stand up for hard-pressed motorists in Harlow and across the country.
Is there anything we as motorists can do, do you think?
Yes, I think we need to be much tougher. We're lucky that there are some great websites out there indicating petrol, how high petrol is in certain areas, but we need to be much tougher at boycotting petrol stations that rip us off. I mean, why is it, for example, on the A414 leading out of Harlow, the BP garage charges an absolute mint and the Shell garage is slightly cheaper? So we need to be very careful and hard-nosed about which petrol stations we go to.
Won't that lead us to the big supermarkets at the expense of the small suppliers, and therefore jeopardise the business of the small suppliers? Yeah,
but often the smaller suppliers, the really independent petrol stations, are the cheapest. There's lots of examples of that. Who are the people who are ripping us off are the big oil companies, the Shell Oils and the BPs and so on and so forth. And we just have to put a stop to it.
This afternoon, what will actually happen?
Well, I'm doing a debate on this and urging the government to listen to the concerns of motorists for the fair fuel rebate and no more petrol taxes. I'll wait to hear the government's response, and then there's going to be a press conference to launch the Fair Fuel Campaign Parliamentary Group.
Well, that's Robert Halfon there, the MP, the Conservative MP for Harlow, parliamentary champion of the Fair Fuel Campaign.